You're not responsible. It was wrong. Reach out to me. We'll connect you.
I will never see, speak, or hear from Aaron Smith Levin for the rest of my life.
I've been raised since the age of 4 to follow orders, do as I was told, or risk losing everything.
If we speak out, that's the only way they're going to get the strength to have the courage to do the same.
Why the hell does someone have to escape to get out of a religion?
I'm still shocked by the evil. This is pure evil at work.
All right, welcome to another Come Get Some Extra Scientology edition. This is part 2 of Lois Reisdorf. Where we left off with Lois last week, she was saying she was too nice to have ever been the person that potentially would take over Scientology the way David Miscavige did. And when we pick up on part 2, we'll pick up right from that. And it's a very important interview, a very deep and emotional message from Lois to her son Craig. A lot of great information, inside information from somebody who was there in Lois Reisdorf. Very sweet lady. Before we do this, I want to address the OSA in the room. Yes, hi OSA. I know you're listening. I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you for giving me my stats. Apparently OSA's been really busy, and for those of you at home listening, or wherever you are listening, who don't know what OSA is, they used to be called the Guardian's Office of Scientology. And you can't really call it that anymore because if you look up Guardian's Office, you'll find all these official government documents showing that on L Ron Hubbard's order, Mary Sue Hubbard organized a bunch of people getting together and causing problems with the FBI and IRS stealing documents, federal law breaking, plus trying to drive an innocent lady, Paulette Cooper, crazy for speaking out against them, and actually up to and including framing her for bomb threats they wrote themselves to themselves using her papers in her hotel room or apartment with her fingerprints on it. They tried to frame this lady. This is all proven information. It's not hearsay from, say, from a forum or from the Inquirer. This is real news. And so now they're called the Office of Special Affairs, OSA, and they're kind of like enforcers and police of Scientology. And what they do nowadays is they basically, behind the shadows and behind the scenes, they track down people speaking out against Scientology, primarily ex-Scientologists or anyone really a threat, and they try to screw with them and reach a lot, a massive amount of fuckery and maximum doucheness. Because that's Religion 101, right? Right now, for a little bit of an emotional but a very important part 2 with Lois Reisdorf to get a little bit more inside information. Again, to remind you, I had asked her if there was any chance she could have possibly been the leader of Scientology if things worked out a different way. She said no, she felt like she was way too nice, and we're going to pick up right from there.
Our understanding was that it was going to be a committee that was going to run it anyway, and it wasn't going to be one person. And that is something that I've been trying to make the point of, is that specifically when I had my interview with 2020, is that the intention was never for one person to become the replacement for L Ron Hubbard. And that was never his intention. So the fact that he has become that was when I first started realizing that he actually had fully taken over, and that when I started going back into the orgs and I could see everybody standing up and going hooray, hooray for him, that's when I was like, oh my God, this is crazy, because that's never what L Ron Hubbard wanted.
You saw from a different perspective than the majority.
Right, and his whole thing, from what my understanding was that the Church of Scientology was going to be run by a committee where there was not one person that was going to be the it person.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I always envisioned that was what I was going to be, was part of that committee. We would have been a managing committee of the Church of Scientology. Yes.
Oh wow.
But we would have been like 12 or 13 people who would, because we had already started that as the Watchdog Committee.
That's right.
But you see, when you look at the history of Scientology, whenever, and if, now looking back on it, whenever there was one person that would become kind of like famous in Scientology, they wouldn't last long. He never wanted someone else to become just as famous or just as adored as him.
Gotcha.
So,
This is before Tom Cruise and John Travolta became the faces of Scientology. That's a different thing.
That's a different thing because,
Yeah.
Because they don't have anything to do with the running of Scientology.
Exactly.
They're just like the PR
Okay.
factor.
Gotcha. I gotcha. So
after being out for 30 years and then coming back into the orgs, you know, when Gary and I were trying to be good people now, to try and save our family, that was the thing. When I would go to the events for the church, I would just like be horrified.
So you were skating by, like you went back to live with your family for 30 years, right? You lived with your mom and just sort of laid low, didn't bother with the whole thing of the actually attending
Yep.
events and doing things until they started calling you out on it.
Yep, and South Africa was kind of like off the main course of Scientology, so we were very much under the radar.
How did your mom feel about that? Was she unhappy with you? Is she trying to urge you to be more involved?
There were a few times where she tried to get me more involved, but she knew that there was a reason why I wasn't gung-ho anymore.
But not enough for her to stop doing what she was doing. She was already invested.
Yeah, and they had slowed down tremendously by the last few years before she died.
Okay.
I mean, her little mission was very small. She was like auditing like one person, and she would run a little course on some nights, and it was very laid back.
How close would you say you... I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
And then my stepfather, Neville, was actually a chemical engineer. Prior to getting into Scientology, he had just finished like 12 years of university. He was highly regarded. And, it just got to the point with so many kids, and they'd come back out of the Sea Org, and they went back to South Africa to run their missions and stuff. And he had to go and earn a living. So he worked full-time, in one of the biggest paper pulp companies in the world, actually. He was research and development.
Wow.
So, and we really had a great life with them. We were never, there was never any heavy pressure from them to get back into Scientology. She would try every now and again, but it was, she had a light touch about it. It wasn't heavy.
Gotcha. So I think it gets heavy when someone from the church is putting pressure on the parent, and the parent starts putting the pressure on the child.
Exactly.
So she didn't have that.
By that time, she had her first 3 grandchildren, and I mean, they were the world to her. There was like, that is just, and now I'm a grandmother, and you just get to that point in your life, and there's just no way that someone could tell you that you're no longer going to not only see your daughter, but now you're not going to be able to see your 3 grandsons.
Yeah, we're about to get right into this connection here. Your mother, when I read your blog, it seems like you were very close to her.
Yeah.
When I hear the videos of your sisters, it's a different story. Can you go ahead and talk about that?
I think that's the thing that upset me the most from my sisters' testimonies, or whatever they did, the videos.
Whatever you call that, yeah.
Is that yes, I was very close to my mom, and she was only 21 when she had me. So by the time, because I'd lost 10 years of my childhood with her, by the time I came back, our relationship was very much like close friends.
Mm-hmm.
We talked to each other on the phone every day.
Yeah, I mean, something that you bring up is with this connection was it didn't always have to be someone who had ever had anything to do with the church. Case in point, your son Brett and his fiance or wife at the time. You were being told that you had a disconnect from them, or he had a disconnect from his fiance because of her parents. Am I getting this right?
Well, yeah, so they were already married when all this started happening, and her parents were also ex-Scientologists, but they were also under the radar. They weren't in any trouble. They had Scientology friends, and then they had ex-Scientology friends, and they kept them very separate. Like they just went through the years just in that kind of vein, you know? And Jessie and her brother were never brought up in Scientology, and in fact knew even less about Scientology than my kids did. So,
yeah.
So when her parents were declared SP, and that was because, you know, the orgs and stuff would always try to recover them, and then they would tell them to F off. They just were getting into trouble that way. Plus, her father was very good friends with David Miscavige's brother, Ronnie Miscavige. And so I think when that became known, that was like, okay, these people are suppressive people, and they got declared, which I think was at the end of 2014, and then we were told, Brett and Jessie, you know, and that was the thing that I just couldn't ever understand, was like, how can you tell someone who is a non-Scientologist, who's never been a Scientologist ever, and neither of them ever had, now that they have to disconnect from her parents and all of their friends who had previously been ex-Scientologists. It was just insane. Like, we couldn't grasp our heads around this. And I kept bringing it up to the ethics officers, saying, you know, how can you do this? Like, this is really bad PR for Scientology to now tell people who had never had anything to do with Scientology that they have to unfriend certain people on Facebook, that they really weren't allowed to do anything with her parents. And that was when I started going, God, this is insane, because I could just imagine, and they live like 8 miles away from us, so her parents do. So I was just imagining having a grandchild, and then, you know, the birth of the baby, and having to go to the hospital to see the baby, but then I had to make sure that her parents weren't there, or the child's first birthday party, but then we wouldn't be able to go because the parents were there, or they were hosting it, so now we couldn't go. You know, I just started realizing that this is just so insane that I can't do this.
Well, the way you're describing the situation you're describing, as it was, I'm no legal expert, but what they're asking for from Brett and his wife is much different than anything falling under church law. At this point, it just becomes blackmail.
Yeah, and that's how we felt. Gary and I felt as though we were being blackmailed, and I even had like it was just Craig and me having like a conversation which turned into him yelling at me about this exact thing that I'm talking about, where I was trying to tell him that this is not right, that I've never heard of this happening in Scientology when I was in, where people that were not even Scientologists, but because they're connected to ex-Scientologists who have been declared, we can't have anything to do with them, you know? And this was the exact thing that I brought up to him.
So let me get some context here. Were you guys just having a casual conversation? You were upset. You were just talking to him, and you didn't expect him to have that reaction? Is that how that went down?
Well, it wasn't just a casual conversation. He actually came over here to our house to talk to me about this. And I remember what the situation was that Gary's one sister who's declared daughter was getting married. And what happened was, so her daughter is also not a Scientologist, never been a Scientologist, knew very little about Scientology, was getting married here in San Diego. And this is our wonderful little niece, you know? I mean, we had known her since we'd moved here back from South Africa in 98. And so we made a pact that we were going to go to the wedding, that we weren't going to tell Craig, and we made sure that we weren't in any photos that were, you know, going to be put on the internet about the wedding. However,
how crazy did you have to go through all that?
Also went to the wedding, and
Yeah.
he was on staff at the San Diego org at the time, and he ended up being in a photo with his two cousins in like a funny photo box that they have at weddings where you put on funny hats and stuff. And one of the nephews posted that on Facebook, and Craig saw it. So Craig then found out that we had gone to the wedding.
How crazy that you had to jump through hoops to do that. That's crazy.
I know. So this was like a huge flap, and in fact, it was during this time that we were having a committee of evidence up in L.A., Gary and I were like in the middle of this committee of evidence.
So you're on Scientology trial.
Right. And Craig wrote up a big knowledge report on the three of us that we had done this. So, of course, at that point, I thought for sure we were going to be declared right then. But fortunately, we managed to get out of it. And they didn't declare us right then. But it was crazy. So Craig came over here and confronted me about this and said, "What are you doing? You know, you're screwing everything up," and, you know, just went on. And that's when I brought up this whole thing. I said, you know, the thing is now if Dad and I are going to be back on lines in Scientology, it means that we can't see any of these nieces and nephews because they're connected to, you know, Gary's sister and her husband, because those are their parents. So now we can't communicate with them. We can't communicate with Jessie, my daughter-in-law's parents. It just got to the point where our whole family was just being reduced to nothing.
I want to try to understand what they wanted you to do here, because it gets a little muddled for me in my head. That's just because I'm not familiar. You know, I'm just now getting familiar over the last few months with how it all works. Were you going to work out of Scientology and be clear of Scientology, but you still had your SP mandates, but first you had to make amends for other things? Were you on this long journey back to a full circle, or?
So basically, in 1982, when we left the Sea Org, I was declared a suppressive person by David Miscavige, and we were the first ones. So this was me and Gary's two sisters, because we were senior executives in the church. So we were the first three big declares that happened before all the others that happened soon after.
Okay.
Okay? So when I went back to South Africa in the early 80s, in 83, I got through all the steps necessary to be back in good standing with the church. I did everything.
Okay.
My A to E steps. So I was actually cleared. I was considered a Scientologist in good standing up until January of 2015, when I was redeclared again. But because I hadn't been active in Scientology for all those years, for 30 years, when we went back in, we had to be, had to go through all these hoops now because we hadn't been active.
Okay, and now you have this blackmail of you can't just walk away or you're automatically SP, you lose all this. But if you go through the steps and you become cleared by Scientology, allowed to be in good standing, then you lose all these other family members.
Exactly. And I remember one day sitting with the ethics officer up at AOLA in LA, and she wanted to know the names of all the family members. So Gary comes from a big family of 7 children. So you can imagine how many nieces and nephews there are on that side of the family, which is just huge compared to mine. So not all of those children were ever Scientologists. So it was mainly the last 4 kids that were Scientologists. But the ethics officer wanted to know the names of all those children, all the kids and their children and whatever, because 2 of the siblings were declared. If any of those other siblings were going to be in contact with those declared siblings, then we weren't able to communicate to them either, even if they're not Scientologists.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, they really stick it to you.
It's hectic. It's incredible. This is the thing when Gary and I started going, oh my God, something is really, really wrong with Scientology, and it has gone insane.
You posted in your blog, I think this letter wasn't too long before this all went down, if I'm not mistaken. You correct me if I'm wrong, but a letter from Craig to you and Gary for what wonderful parents you've been to him.
Yes.
So that was like real recent, real recent too, before he had that shouting match with you?
Oh yeah, this was right. This is like, those letters were written like a year before.
Okay, so he was so grateful because you were such perfect, such wonderful, giving, loving parents. You did everything right by him, and you could never do wrong in his eyes, it looked like, by that letter. Yeah. To come up on your own, out of the clear blue, because I don't know if I've ever done anything like that. You know what I mean? To write a letter like that is like maybe one of the nicest, most thoughtful thing you could ever do, is write your parents a letter like that out of the blue.
Oh, I know. And I mean, when we reread them, like when I was writing that blog, both of us were in tears.
Right, because that was the son you know.
Right.
Did he ever express a different view on this connection before this all went down? Did he ever talk about how it's silly this person can't talk to that person, or was it never really a thing brought up? Or
no, it wasn't ever a thing that was brought up until it was brought up to him. Like, so basically I guess there was, because he went to South Africa and had to disconnect from Gary's sisters. So in South Africa, they were saying he had to disconnect from them. And when we got him back here after 6 months, that's when he became a Scientologist, and we got him back here, I said to him, Craig, this is like not right. And he kind of followed what I was saying to a certain extent. He wasn't, we would actually have them over here for a barbecue or whatever, and he would still show up, He didn't really talk to them, but he would maybe give them a hug and say hi, and then, not really talk to them. But then it just became even more crazy because he was going to be put on a job in the local San Diego org that was in HCO, which is the Hubbard Communications Office, and that's quite a big job.
Yeah.
And at the time, I thought, I can't believe that they're putting like a brand new Scientologist on that post. It was just crazy to me. But what they did is they sent him to LA for a few weeks, and that was the first time that he got sex checked, which is the, interrogations. So he had never experienced that before. And he got off all his little things that he's done in his life that were bad, which seriously, he was a really good kid. So I can't even imagine what silly things he did.
Well, you end up making stuff up. Yeah.
Yeah, but he was determined to be not qualified for that job afterwards, and I think it's because he had smoked marijuana or something.
Okay.
And so he didn't get that job, but that was when things really changed with him. Like, he was now, had been such a terrible person before, is what he even told me, But he wasn't.
But that's what they do, right? They convince you.
He was such a good teenager. We never had problems with him.
Well, it's funny because even Jenna Elfman's been recorded on camera yelling at a reporter, "What are your crimes? Have you raped a baby?" That's a weird thing to yell out at somebody, but that's kind of the nature of what you're going through. So you obviously did something, if not in this life, in the past life, to talk about it and find it. This is why you can't do. So I feel like, and tell me if this is how you see it, I feel like he was offered a great position far beyond what he should be able to get, which he felt like it was a dream come true, too good to be true. You take the carrot away and say it's because this, and this. Oh, and your suppressive family members are holding you back too. Then he starts realizing, I have to make some changes in my life, or big opportunities are going to pass me by. I got to be able to provide for my new Scientology girlfriend and, fiance.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so that's how it feels like.
Absolutely.
Now you've seen.
And that's exactly how I would characterize it. You just hit it spot on, really.
I'm sure you've seen movies with the Nazi boot camp, or like the old V Lizard miniseries where the kid's taken to the visitor youth program and he's given a high position right away, and all of a sudden his family is the enemy because they're against him doing something that makes him happy and successful, which is how Craig sounded in that video, which is the opposite of that letter you shared.
Right, and the thing is that even at the time, like, I actually thought, when all this was going down, I thought, I wonder if they did that on purpose. Like, they really wanted to get at me. And they offered him that high position in the org, but then needed to do these sex checks because they wanted to find out what was going on.
Yeah, I don't know, because I almost, when I was reading about your blogs, I was almost feeling like they're stringing you along just to get the most money out of you that they could. And once you couldn't get money out of you anymore.
Yeah, and if we would, and the funny thing was that, sure, we were in comm with some people that were declared, but they couldn't really, there was nothing else going on with us. I mean, we hadn't even gone on the internet. We hadn't done nothing. It was like, I think they thought that we really were, but now we are.
Right. Well, I was wondering if you had any insight. Do you have any idea why Brandon would have received these things different than Craig? Is it because he wasn't given his opportunities, instead he was always being punished, or?
What do you mean? Like,
well, Brandon said, screw this, I'm not disconnecting, and he left Scientology. Craig went they did opposite. They made opposite choices in the past.
Yeah, and I really think it's different personalities completely. Just by the fact that Brandon went to our niece's wedding, his cousin's wedding, when he was still on staff at San Diego. You know, you think like he's not someone who he's not necessarily someone who follows the rules 100% all the time, whereas Craig was.
Right.
He was a really good boy. You know what I mean? Like as a kid, he was the one who gave us the least amount of trouble, having 3 sons.
Do you think Scientology in their ranks, do you think they make a better effort with someone you think they can do more with, and someone else who's going to be more resistant, more rebellious? You know, you're going to get more knowledge reports, you're going to get more sec checks, you're going to get more scrutiny.
Definitely. You know, Brandon's his own person. He makes his own decisions, whereas Craig was definitely someone who needed to have reassurance.
He was looking for answers. He was looking for answers.
And there were times, you know, am I doing this right? Do you think I'm doing this right? You know, asking his brothers or us, like, is this good enough? Am I doing good enough? You know, he needed a lot of reassurance, whereas Brandon was a lot more his own person, make his own decisions.
I want to talk to you real quick about, so to come back to Craig's video. If I may give my own unqualified, completely untrained opinion on that video, I'd like to point out, if you hadn't already noticed, there wasn't much in that video where he attacked you or Gary. He actually stayed away from it, it seemed.
Yeah, like Tony Ortega said on his, like he said on his blog the day after those came out, he said it was the most benign video of all the videos that he'd seen from, you know, all the different Scientologists talking about their family members was the most benign.
Yeah, he's looking for something to say, and he can't bring himself to say anything about you.
Right, because he can't really. I mean, we were a very close family, you know. I've had these kids in my life like every day, every month since they were born. You know?
Yeah. I have to say, I believe in his case there's hope. Just from that observation, I think there's hope. I don't think it helps that he's got aunts in there who are kind of persuading him, it seems, and
I mean, the good thing is that they're, you know, on the other side of the world, and the only real way to communicate is through WhatsApp and Facebook messaging and that sort of thing with them, because I suppose you can also make free calls through those apps now.
Sure.
But, I think there's been a certain amount of influence for sure from them. And I could see Craig communicating to Levane and my other sister Dion, definitely looking from a motherly point of view, you know?
Right. Just almost like a surrogate type of situation.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
it doesn't, but there has been a more recent thing from him on that Stand website that the church put out, which was, I don't know, against discrimination or something.
It's BS, yeah, that one. Yeah, STAAD, I think is the actual.
He put a thing out that was a bit more heavier.
Oh, did he? I did not see that. Okay.
Yeah, that's more recent.
Because you did something more recent.
In fact, in that thing, you know, he's trying to make it out like, you know, we were after him and his brothers would bang on his doors. Well, that's not all so true either.
Right. And why wasn't that in the last video? That seems more incriminating to me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, maybe they're responding to Tony Ortega's suggestion that was benign, and they're trying to come up with something more. You know, Chris Shelton says, you know, he thinks they're doing it at gunpoint anyway. Like, they don't necessarily want to say the things they're saying a lot of the time. Or do you feel like they have
definitely. And I think especially with Craig, that must have been, like my son Brett, when he listened to it, he said that he felt as though there was a lot of editing done, that it looked, obviously we know Craig better than anybody, and he felt that there were times where Craig was almost crying. And he felt as though they had edited out like a little part of it because maybe there was a tear or two.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm going to give you a chance at the end of all this to give your own personalized message to Craig, and hopefully he'll hear it somehow. But what I do, especially on these heavier ones, we do a podcast with one of my guests. I do something fun, kind of, and there's some serious stuff in it, but it's just different questions, 10 questions. I call it Think Fast, although it never goes fast. And just your first answer comes to mind, and at the end we'll give a message to Craig for you.
Okay.
Are you up for that?
Sure.
All right, 10 questions with Lois Reisdorf. Number 1, what are the best qualities of South Africa? What are we missing here in America?
The people and the beautiful landscape.
All right, I believe it. Number 2, ice cream, pizza, or something else?
Ice cream.
Haha, yes. All right, number 3. This is kind of what people might think and what the truth is, I guess. Leah Remini, you think she's probably more what than what? Blank than blank.
She's more genuine than fake.
I believe that too. Number 4, true or false? You would totally be involved in a family reunion today, regardless of where anybody's affiliation is, as long as it's about your family being together and nothing else.
True.
I believe you. Number 5. Name 3 lies that have been told about your family.
3 lies that we're racist and bigots, that we hate Scientologists, because seriously, if someone wants to be a Scientologist, I'm fine with it, as long as these horrible, disgusting policies are not part of it.
But yeah, they don't represent every single person wearing the clothes and uniform. Absolutely.
Exactly. And that we're not family oriented, because we totally are.
I believe you. It's so funny that you guys are racist bigots, yet you're multiracial. But anyway, okay. Number 6. This is something that I've been thinking a lot about, especially since I had an independent Scientologist on the show recently. Would you support reformation of Scientology? Would you prefer just, try something different?
Yeah, if someone wants to go ahead and do that, I'm totally for it. Whether or not I would be involved, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like the answer.
Yeah, okay.
No, you can expand if you wanted to.
Pardon?
If you wanted to say more about it, you can.
Yeah, so the main thing is that I'll just tell you a funny little story, which I actually don't think I even mentioned in my blog. But there was one day that I was talking with L Ron Hubbard. I was with him, and he was just feeling so down, I guess, about everything, like all the legal stuff that was going on, and management seemed to never do a good job about running Scientology. And he was, and he never really was down like a depressed type of person, but this day he was. And he said to me, I wrote the book Dianetics, and I just wanted the book to be out there and for it to have a life of its own. And it was almost like he was saying he was getting involved with making this whole church was just not really what he wanted to do.
It got out of hand, huh? Snowballed.
Right.
And
that he just wished that, he felt that if he had put all the tech out there, that people would just run with it and do what they wanted to do with it. And it kind of really stuck with me. And when I was going through all of this, I thought, God, like now, it's even crazier than it was before. Maybe that is the way it should be, that the technology is just out there and people can do with it what they want.
I don't have a problem with that.
But unfortunately, he's the one who wrote the policies that keeps it the way it is.
It's true. It's so true. Now, I'll say this. You mentioned, we didn't even get into this, and I meant to earlier, but you say he audited himself regularly, like he was into it, like he believed his own words. Do you think he suffered from mental illness or maybe like dementia or something?
Well, now that I've gone through life and I've learned a lot and I've experienced things and I've experienced people with mental illness, I definitely think that he had a type of bipolar type of thing because he had that manic thing about him and bright ideas that were just kind of like out there.
Right.
That he thought, the grandiosity. I feel definitely. In terms of dementia, the funny thing is that his father had dementia. And I definitely feel that right towards the end, like the last maybe couple of times that I met with him, there was possibly, but I do feel that what happened to him afterwards, after I saw him, is that he was like a caged animal. And I believe that was David Miscavige's doing. Between him and Pat Broker, they got him so scared that I think he went off the deep end.
Right. I mean, he had reason to be scared. He was running for the police.
I believe that, but I think, there was a certain way that people, like Mary Sue, his wife, would deal with him with things that would be more of a calming way to relay bad news, that maybe us messengers and Mary Sue would do that would keep things under control with him. And once we were gone, that wasn't there anymore.
And they fed that. They fed that anxiety.
Yeah. And I really do think from what I've seen that he's written after I left, and which included his closest messengers and Mary Sue, that it was definitely things went wrong.
Okay.
Worse,
All right. Wow, that's some good insight right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I personally just my 2 cents, not that it's worth anything, but I think if you wanted to reformation of the Westboro Baptist Church, but without all the anti-homosexual rallies at deceased soldiers' funerals, I wouldn't be for that, because why bother? You go to another church, and that's kind of how I feel about. I think Scientology shouldn't be any different than that, but that's my feeling. But I understand where you're coming from, because that is, I've never heard that perspective before. That's great. All right, so number 7. Hiking, swimming, or binge watching Netflix? What do you prefer?
Swimming, because I was a swimmer.
Oh, very good. Very good. All right. This is a silly question, but a serious question at the same time. I know the answer already. Number 8, true or false? Scientology is a cult. True. Okay. Number 9. This is a little deeper here. Number 9. I've heard Ron Miscavige, David Miscavige's father, use the 3 words to describe his son. He says, "I forgive you," as a message to his son. Your sisters, your other family members, the people still in Scientology today, do you forgive them?
Definitely.
I believe you.
Without
Absolutely.
a doubt. Yep.
And for number 10, this is where I'm going to go ahead.
And the thing that I just want to say on that is that my door is open to any of them. Always.
All right, and number 10, you can kind of add here. Number 10 is where I'm going to go ahead and let you give with. I'm going to be quiet. I'm not going to interrupt you this time. Say anything you want to your family members and to Craig.
Well, I have those. Okay, so I'll just first of all I'll just say to my family members, because I'm going to do Craig separately. I absolutely love all of you guys. I love your kids. And any time that you ever want to talk to me or come and visit me or live with me or whatever you need, you just need to let me know. And you know how to find me. And I love you guys. Okay, so here's for Craig. Hi, Craig. I am 99% sure you will never listen to this, but for the 1% chance, here's my message to you. All of us love you and miss you like you cannot believe. Every day, my heart is sore. We had such a great family before, and we still do, but we are missing you. It helps to have 2 grandchildren now, but I know the day I hear you have children will be a bad day for me. Craig, you have spoken out publicly against us, and even though it hurts to hear what you have said, we know you are being pressured to say these things. Remember back in 2015 the amount of times Dad and I were pleading with you to get back in calm, even before we were declared. We wanted to meet up with you and discuss things, but you shut us down every time. We tried so very hard. Brett also tried, and at least you would talk to him back in 2015. It gave us hope. But then the next time he tried to talk to you, it was a no-go. You were the one who kicked us out of your life, not the other way around. But we love you so dearly and wish you were with us. You know that our doors are always open no matter what. You are a great person and very smart. So start trying to look instead of listen. Happy birthday for the 26th of April. You will be 27. And the last time I saw you, you were 24. Wow. Sometimes it's so unreal to me. Love you from here to infinity.
Wow.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. One thing that's always been clear to me through talking to Lori Hodgins, I didn't get her on the air yet, but I've talked to Lori and Mary Kahn and others in your situation, is that it was never your choice to do that. It was never your choice to be disconnected, no. And that's the big difference. And that's where you have to start looking up overhead and say, who are these people telling me to do this and why? And that's really important. I do hope that 1% gets to. I hope somehow, some way, enough people forward this podcast and get it around so it falls into the hands of Craig and the rest of your family.
I hope so too. And we do have that website up. I don't know if you've seen it, the CraigReisdorfWithLove.com.
I will link that, definitely.
Yeah. And so we put up, really beautiful blogs on there to him. And obviously for his birthday on the 26th, we're going to put up a whole bunch for his birthday. And so I just hope, when you Google his name, that's the first website that comes up now.
Okay. Wow. Well, Lori has told me that if her kids came back and stayed in Scientology, she would just keep her mouth shut just to have her kids back. Is that how you feel?
It'll never happen that way. For me, for us, it could never happen that way.
Because they're always going to get somewhere in your family and say that you can't be connected.
Right, because we just have too many. If you look at it from this point of view, I come from 6 kids, Gary comes from 7, and we were both born into Scientology.
Yeah.
And we're grandparents. There's just too many connections. And I can't do that.
Yeah, that's what I say.
It'll include and it'll include one of my sons and my grandchildren.
Yep.
You know, I mean, that's just like impossible. It's which is, like I said in my blog, it's a Sophie's choice.
It is.
You know.
It's like I said with Aaron Smith-Levin, his kids can't know their grandparents, and those kids did nothing to their grandparents.
Of course, and I mean, I look after my grandchildren twice a week, you know, and it's not just looking after them, it's that's how involved I am in their lives. You know, and Brandon lives with us, and Brett is here all the time. You know, that's how close we are.
Well, Lois, there's a lot of people now working on getting this taken care of and addressed and getting attention brought to it. I just saw another anti-Scientology podcast pop up in the last week. You might have noticed. I don't know who they are, but I'm definitely going to check them out. So there's definitely more and more people every day. I mean, Joe Rogan's having once a month or twice a month anymore, right? I mean, this is getting out, and the attention's getting out, and I really hope that I feel like that there's going to be resolution for everybody. It's just a matter of when and how big it's going to be when it happens.
Yeah, and I just appreciate so much everybody what they're doing. I mean, it is just mind-blowing to me how unbelievable people are, and Leah Remini and Mike Rinder and you and Tony Ortega and everyone who's out there doing this. It's just so important because it just has to end.
I agree.
It's not okay.
I agree. Was there anything else you wanted to say before? Yeah, you're about to say something. No. Anything else you want to say before we go?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for their support, and you know, it really has been amazing, and the more people that are talking out, the better it is for everyone else.
Yes.
And for all those people who have, you know, way worse stories than me, and it just gives everyone the courage to do it, and people need to do it more so that we just flood everything with it.
So you can't avoid it. Like, it's harder to avoid than ever. You can't avoid it.
Nope. And it's just so amazing to me how even my friends who didn't even know that I was a Scientologist, and they have known me for so long, have just been the biggest support to me. And you know, I just appreciate all that so much. And then people who I had never even met. It's been amazing.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I thank you for your courage and being willing to speak on the podcast, because it's yours wasn't easy. Yours wasn't easy.
No.
And you're it's amazing that you did what you did here tonight, and I think everybody's going to appreciate, especially those others who are in your boat as well. Really.
And I just hope everyone understands it, and if, you know, they can always contact me, find me on the internet, and contact me if they have any other questions, because I know even in my blogs, it was just so hard to explain, and I wrote those blogs to the audience of an ex-Scientologist. So, fortunately, there's so many people that have read them, but a lot of the people had no idea about Scientology, and I used all these Scientology terms.
You did. You did.
So I've actually thought, wow, maybe I should just start from the beginning again and just rewrite it from, you know, to an average person.
There is one paragraph near the end that's just a bunch of letters to me. It's just a bunch of, it's all acronyms. Yeah. The and this and that. I got those words, but no, I was able to use, you know, simple
and
skills.
All the people that have read it said they were able to get the gist of things.
Right.
Yeah, because Mike Rinder's blog before the Aftermath series was really totally ex-Scientology. So it was kind of crazy that after he was on the whole series, people just flooded his website,
I know,
his blog, and so it really took off, and there were just so many now just normal public who were going to it. But anyway, yeah, it was a very good thing that I did that. It was really it made me look back on my whole life, because I had never even read those letters from my mom, or that I had written to my mom. When I received them, I didn't even look at them. And it just actually was healing for me, to write and say what I've been wanting to say for like 34 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope this wasn't too painful for you. I hope it's more therapeutic. I hope it helps other people as well.
Every time I do this, it's so therapeutic. It's just, when I actually have to talk to Craig, I'm sorry, it is very emotional.
No, absolutely. What I think is great, I don't mean to make fun of anything. What I think is great is I get a lot of people after they've talked to Leah or other podcasts, and by the time they get to me, I always worry that it's going to get too deep, and I'm not going to know what to do. And luckily, you guys have conditioned yourself a little bit about to what you need to talk about. So I've been fortunate to get you guys at your best. But no, you can't substitute emotion though, and the emotion's definitely there. There was emotion with Mary Kahn, and then just everybody's been great with their stories, and I feel bad. One of the first things I ever said, I think people know by now, but what I said when I first started doing this is, the last thing I want to do is exploit anyone. So that's why I almost start every sentence with, look, I don't mean this, but,
Yeah.
No exploiting. Just want to get that out there.
No, I don't feel it, and I really appreciate it, and it was great, and I hope that it turns out okay.
I think it was fine. Are you happy with it? We can go ahead and start over. No, I'm just kidding. Start over. Oh, Lois, it's been great. I love talking to you. First time I ever spoke to you.
Yeah, that was great.
All right.
I hope you feel clearer on things.
It helps to have somebody who was there with ORH in the boat from the beginning. Yeah. It's a real interesting. A lot of different things came out, even after 10 questions, that just I didn't expect to get out of it. So yes, thank you. And I think a lot of my listeners who, or maybe on my level, or maybe even know less, will feel a little bit better knowing some things and having some answers.
Right. And so when do you think this will be out?
All right. Well, I'm recording this right after John Sweeney Part 1 aired, so you'll be in 2 weeks. So this will be airing. I'll give you an actual air date. This will be airing on May 5th.
Okay. Good.
So,
perfect.
Cool deal. Anything else you want to get out?
Nope.
All right. I'm going to link all your links, your blog, your social media, all that stuff, so people know how to get a hold of you if they didn't already know. And you take care of you. Don't be a stranger, okay, Lois?
Thanks so much, Chris. That was great. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
It.
Very, very welcome. Take care.
Bye.
So that was Lois Reisdorf. She's a real sweetheart, real sweet lady. And if you were willing to or had the time to jump over to Mike Rinder's blog, Something Can Be Done, and you go to the left side, a little bit halfway down the page, there's a search box. You can search Lois Reisdorf and find her 8-part story, which actually has that letter from Craig to his mom and dad, telling them how great parents they are and how much he appreciates them, which is a total stark contrast to what we see now. Just to really drive that point home. I hope this podcast gets out to the maximum amount of people, for no other reason than to help Craig get that message if possible. Otherwise, guys, this has been one heck of a packed show. It's more packed than I think I've had in a while. I thank you for sticking with us. I think more great stuff to come. Make sure you come back. Stay connected. That about sums it up. Have a great week, everybody.
You have been listening to Come Get Some Extra on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, YouTube, and many other streaming services where available. As always, stay connected, and that about sums it up.